Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good day, welcome to Front and Center, where we focus on developments in the Philippines, legislation that provides policies and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country, issues that concern the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. All of these and more will be Front and Center. You can watch this program live on our Facebook page, that's Radyo Pilipinas World Service. And you can also hear us live on our audio streaming at Evox PBS Receiver app. So join us for another edition of Front and Center with your host, Jerome Toledo.
Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
In the economy, the Philippines' aspiration to become an upper middle income country, or UMIC, might take longer than expected. That's according to the World Bank lead economist Gonzalo Varela when he faced the reporters yesterday. Varela pointed the global uncertainties as a factor that may slow the country's economic growth. And as Reuters reported, oil prices is up nearly 3% as Israel-Iran conflict escalates, while financial markets may be sold off if the US military attacks Iran, with economists warning that a dramatic rise in oil prices could damage a global economy already strained by President Donald Trump's tariffs. Meanwhile, our central bank, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, continues its rate cuts to directly address global economic challenges. They added that more rate cuts are possible, and also the Monetary Board reduced the interest rates by another 25 basis points. That latest cut brings the interest rates on the overnight deposits and lending facilities to 4.75% and 5.75% respectively. And the central bank has so far reduced policy rates by a total of 125 basis points since last year. And the BSP's inflation forecast for this year was adjusted downward to 1.6% from the previous 2.4%. And also forecasts for 2026, however, slightly rose to 3.4% from 3.3%, so that's a 1% down. And also for 2027 from 3.2% to 3.3%. So within those 2-year term, there is a slight decrease or slight increase rather on those numbers. And also inflation expectations also remained well anchored. And BSP Deputy Governor Zeno Ronald Abinoja said that the global oil prices declined in past months. And while an increase was observed recently, international oil prices continue to be relatively lower than last year. And also, the Monetary Board also underscored the indications of a deceleration in global economic activity driven primarily by uncertainty over U.S. trade policy and the conflict in the Middle East. Just like what we mentioned earlier, that given that there is an ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran, so that may affect or may significantly affect the global economy. And BSP Governor Eli Remolona said that that situation will lead to slower growth in the Philippines. And he said a rise in oil prices, electricity rate adjustments, and higher rice tariffs would add to inflationary pressures. And Governor Remolona said another 25 basis points policy rate cut is possible within the year. So, meaning to say, further rate cuts is possible. That's upon the 25 basis points that was implemented recently. And when we come back, so we will have a discussion regarding that economic discussions. Then that's none other than Mr. Michael Ricafort, the chief economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation. He will tell us or explain to us what's going on and how these economic situations across the globe may significantly affect the Philippine economy in general. That's all coming up here on Front and Center when we come back.
This is a public service announcement.
Alamin, ito ang walang pasok guide batay sa DepEd Order No. 37 Series of 2022. Sa panahong may bagyo, automatic na walang pasok for all levels sa mga lugar na may nakataas na Tropical Cyclone Wind Signal o TCWS number 1, 2, 3, 4 at 5. Automatic suspended naman ang klase at trabaho kung ang TCWS ay inilabas sa oras na nagsimula na ang klase. Para sa mga lugar na hindi kabilang sa TCWS, ngunit nakararanas ng malakas na hangin o ulan, nakadepende kay Mayor o kay Governor ang desisyon sa suspensyon. Tandaan, sakop lamang ng DepEd Order na ito ang levels K-12 sa mga pampublikong paaralan, ngunit may option naman ang mga pribadong paaralan, state or local universities and colleges na sundin ito.
This is a public service announcement. Public service announcement
From PBS, Presidential Broadcast Service, and Radyo Pilipinas.
This is a public service announcement.
Maging handa sa oras ng sakuna. Para sa iyo at sa iyong pamilya, laging siguruhin, Go Bag ay nakahanda at naglalaman ng mga sumusunod. Ilang pirasong damit, ready-to-eat na pagkain at inuming aabot ng 3 araw. Personal na gamit para sa inyong hygiene. First aid kit kabilang ang alcohol, bandages, gamot sa lagnat, ubo at sipon, pati na rin ang inyong vitamins at maintenance medicines. Maglagay ng pito, flashlight, lighter o posporo. Huwag kalimutan ang mga charger o power bank. At higit sa lahat, isama ang mga importanteng gamit gaya ng inyong mga legal na dokumento, IDs, ATM o passbook, insurance at iba pa.
This is a public service announcement. Public service announcement
From PBS, Presidential Broadcast Service, and Radyo Pilipinas.
Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Welcome back to Front and Center here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service with me, Jerome Toledo. And earlier, we discussed about the economic situation here in the Philippines, particularly the economic status of the Philippines, because the World Bank has said yesterday that achieving higher economic status of the Philippines might be taking longer than expected. And also, BSP further cuts its interest rates. That's for 25 basis points. So what does this mean to our Philippine economy? And I think we have now on the line via Zoom the chief economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, none other than Mr. Michael Ricafort. Good morning, Mr. Michael Ricafort. Thank you again for joining us in the program. We appreciate your presence here on our program. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Jerome, and your viewers, and nice to be back.
Okay, yeah. We've been inviting you for for several times, Mr. Michael. But thank you so much for taking our call and our invitation. Anyway, so achieving higher economic status of the Philippines might be taking longer than expected. That's according to World Bank, when particularly. This was said by its lead economist. That's let me see here, Mr. Valera. So, but the government through the Department of Planning, Development, and Economy is optimistic that we can achieve this upper middle income status. That's in 2026. Mr. Michael, for you, when can we achieve upper middle income status?
I think it's possible, Mr. Jerome. Give it as soon as within 1 to 2 years. Actually, that has been delayed because the per capita income of the Philippines is about $4,200, and the cutoff is already near. So around $4,500, and yeah, it would realistically, well, had it not been for higher inflation, had it not been for, well, that was triggered for the past 2 to 3 years by the Russia-Ukraine war, and had
Yeah.
it not been for, of course, drugs like, well, drugs to the economy, like the Trump's protectionist tariffs that
Uh-huh.
slow down the world economy, slower investments, trade, etc. And now we have the Middle East tensions between
Yes, that's
Israel and
added
Iran,
to
and
the
that's
woes.
another headwind. So, because of these external factors, that's delaying the achievement of the middle income status. Because had it not been for those, if inflation had not been that high, and the world growth would have been faster without the Trump's tariffs and the trade wars, and with now this exactly, it started a week ago, the Israel Iran war. This is there is escalation, no? So it could have been much sooner,
Mm.
had it not been for for
And
those heads, because
this, uh-huh,
the whole world is affected by all of those.
and this, Mike, Sir Michael, oil prices will definitely rise, but I'm not sure if how much oil prices will rise. As I read it here, that's right now it's actually 3 to 4% increase as we are talking right now. So these developments will surely affect or impact the global economy and also our local economy here in the Philippines, Mr. Michael.
Yeah, true. It's gonna, uh, well, world oil prices are at their highest in nearly 5 months. So they're back to January 23 levels. So now, there's an immediate, a week since the Israel-Iran war. So suddenly there's an upward adjustment right away. And yeah, because the exchange rate also reacted. The exchange rate coming from 55.88 levels, before the Independence Day holiday. Then when we all came back, come
Mm-hmm.
June 13 in the morning, the war already broke out between Israel and Iran.
Mm-hmm.
The dollar peso now is doing at 57.20. So yeah, so it went up. Well, it went up from 55.80. So that's 1 peso and 40 centavos higher. Uh, that's also adding to the price of imported oil, because dollars are paid to import. We almost import all of our oil requirements, and dollars are paid. So, that's like almost 3% increase in the cost of the dollar that is used to pay for these imports. And it's more than $10 increase in the price of world oil prices. But yeah, the surprising thing about it is that no, it's barely a week. Yeah, true. It may be true that some of the oil supply coming from, for example, based on Singapore Minoplatz for the Finnish fuel products like gasoline and diesel, and then the others from the Middle East. Yeah, from the time that it's being loaded on the oil tankers till they arrive here being refined. Well, although there's just one oil refinery that's remaining in the country, so the turnaround time there is around 1 month. So uh, it's really, if you try to realize it, there's still old stocks out there in the market that should, well, suddenly there's this big adjustments right away, more than
Mm-hmm.
a week after the when the war
Uh-huh.
uh, broke out. And it's really also a function of competition,
Okay. All right.
healthy competition among the market players.
Okay. Okay. So, Sir Michael, so in your forecast, now that Israel and Iran are in conflict, plus there is an existing tariff in place, that's tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. With Can we say the global economy is contracting?
Well, not yet. There's still growth, actually. Even the World Bank is of the view. The World
Mm-hmm.
Bank came up with the latest forecast, actually, for the Philippines and the rest of the world. Their forecast this year is 2.3%. Next year, 2.4%. For 2027, 2.5%. So there's still modest growth for the world economy. And for the Philippines, it's uh, it's 5.3% this year, 5.4% next year, and 5.5% for 2027. So that was reduced from 6% levels, no, the previous estimates, because it was triggered by the by Trump's higher tariffs, the trade
Yeah.
wars, and protectionist
And
policies.
that was
It's
just the
gonna
beginning, Sir Michael, of
yeah.
that. Mhm.
We don't that doesn't include yet the latest Israel-Iran war. And there's this even the risk of the US being dragged into that war, the risk of escalation,
Yeah.
because we're monitoring how high would oil prices go up. Now it's up by $10. The sensitivity analysis there. For every $10 increase in oil, inflation tends to pick up by 0.2 to 0.3%. So we don't know yet. Well, so far it has stabilized at around 74, 75 per barrel. It has been there like for a few days already. And it's a function of it's too uncertain. We don't know. Trump was signaling US might decide within 2 weeks if they would
Yes.
join the war, because
True.
they're trying to these global policymakers, the diplomatic community, the international community, they're all carefully managing this,
Yes.
no, in a
But
diplomatic
uh
way. And but we don't know if their decisions would impact on world price, especially if there would be disruption on supply, because that's a risk. If the Strait of Hormuz, that this is not the first time that actually the first direct encounter between Iran and Israel happened April of last year,
yeah,
and
right.
again July of last year, July 1. So and there are smaller retaliation, but now it's really, the war is bigger, in the sense that we have seen the extent of the attacks on the nuclear facilities by Israel on Iran, and we've seen right, the type of
All
retaliation
right.
now by
But Sir
Iran on
Michael,
Israel. So yeah.
uh-huh. But Sir Michael, of course, given that this is situation is ongoing, so some traders and businessmen are anxiously watching the developments regarding the oil supply and also the economic growth. So they're anxiously watching developments unfolding.
Yeah, it's it's gonna add to inflation eventually. Imagine the dollar is now above 57 at 57.20. Although it's better than the previous day's 57.45. That's the highest in like 2.5 months. It's back to the levels like in early April, no? And the oil prices are back to January levels, or 5 months ago. So, but we have to note that inflation would still remain benign as long as there's no escalation, and still wait and see on that. And you know, Also on the trade war, the 90-day pause by Trump to the 10% baseline tariff, it happened April 9. Initially, Trump announced April 2, the Liberation Day, the reciprocal tariff, 17% tariff on the Philippines, the lowest being on Singapore, the likes of Vietnam, 46%. April 2. Then after a week, he said, okay, there's a pause, 90 days. 10% for everybody else except for China. China is now down to 30%, coming from a high of 145% from April 10 to May 11. May 12, it's down to 30%. So now the question mark comes July 9. Trump could maintain it, but it's uncertain. It's hard to say. There were signals that he might increase it to 15% for another 150 days. So that would slow things down. That
Okay.
would slow the world economy, especially our exporters, because the Philippines exports 70% of its total exports to the US. And the bigger problem is with our neighboring countries, because their merchandise exports are like 3 to 5 times higher than us. They have a bigger headache than us. So it's going to slow things down. It's going to slow down global investments. It would slow down global trade, especially the exports. and it would also slow down employment on the supply chain, including some OFWs
All
in
right.
the global export supply
Okay.
chain, and the world economy, then the Philippine economy indirectly.
Okay. My next question, Sir Michael, going back here in the Philippines. So, our central bank, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, implemented another rate cut. So that's a 25 basis points. So that's on top of the cuts that they've implemented some few months ago, and BSP is let me see here, will implement another rate cut in the near future. So, for how long can central bank implement cut rates? So, because as we know, rate cut will jumpstart or will boost our economy.
Definitely, yeah, Mr. Jerome. That's very important. Amid all these challenges, that was a pleasant surprise yesterday. In view of these headwinds around the world, the Trump's tariffs and protectionist measures and trade wars would slow the world economy, indirectly slowing the local economy. That's why the World Bank brought it down to 5.3% this year, 5.4 next year, 5.5% in 2027. It used to be above 6% target from estimate by the multilaterals, ADB, World Bank, IMF, and the credit rating agencies. Now it's down to 5% level. So, the way to, a proactive stance is to stimulate economic growth. In terms of policy, growth is the priority. If there's headwind,
But how long,
there's
Sir
delay.
Michael?
They could still, well, the only challenge now in the rate cutting cycle, is the price of oil because of the uncertainties in the Middle East. The signaling, the governor said of the BSP yesterday, when they cut the rate by 0.25 to 5.25, actually that's the lowest already in like 2.5 years, since November 2022. They may cut another 25 basis points for the rest of the year. Even the U.S. Central Bank, despite the war breaking out in the Middle East, they're still of the view that Fed officials in the U.S. Central Bank officials, they could still cut this year by 50 basis points, another 25 basis points cut by 2026, but that was already reduced from 50 basis points, and another 25 basis points cut by 2027. So that would be a total of 100 basis points cut from 2025 to 2027, and the BSP would match that just like any other central
all
bank
right.
to maintain healthy differential. So that would still, further cut in borrowing costs, in financing costs. It would make borrowings, the loans, the credit cheaper from the point of view of many businesses, big and small, and also for the consumers when they purchase homes, they purchase
Right.
vehicles for their businesses and for personal purposes. So yeah, that's the thing. It's the priority, the policy priority on growth remains there because inflation is still manageable. Because they have done their jobs already. The central banks around the world, including ours, they have already successfully brought down inflation when they raised interest rates 2 to 3 years ago to deliberately slow down demand for commodities like oil. But the thing is, the geopolitical risk is there to. Had it not been for the geopolitical risk, world prices of oil remains among the lowest in like 3.5 to 4 years. But now it's still among the lowest in 3.5 years
All
since
right,
December of
Mr. Michael. Okay,
2011,
so
2021 rather.
so my last question to you for today. So, what should Filipino consumers expect from this economic developments? We are anticipating an oil price hike anytime soon. Should the escalations between Israel and Iran persist, and also the tariffs, and also some other regional conflicts may persist then. So, what should Filipino consumers expect?
The support measures have been there when it comes to policy response. There's already a template, actually. This is not the first time that we're experiencing this, especially the geopolitics. It happens from time to time. It's a function of, it's beyond our control. These external factors, like the Russia-Ukraine war, it happened. And, what was the policy response? And in fact, that has been reiterated. If measures like if oil prices go up further, say to 80 plus, there are already contingencies in place. Like, of course, the most vulnerable sectors, like the transport sectors, and some in the agricultural sector, like the fisher folk, they'll get subsidies, the relief if needed. Uh, yeah, we've seen it not only during the Russia-Ukraine war since 2022, the outbreak of which, but even during the time of the pandemic, there are subsidies to them to cushion the impact, especially on the poorest of the poor. It's targeted. Instead of say, that the taxes on oil still the same because the wealthier people, they pay for also for petroleum, for oil. So the mitigating factor to strike a balance, you know, uh, there are mechanisms in place, especially even for the poorest of the poor. A few years ago, there were also subsidies for them to cope up with higher prices. The prices peaked in January 2023, almost a year after the Russia-Ukraine war, which started February 2022. It was 8.7%. That was inflation. So there was even subsidies for the poorest of the poor, for them a relief to cushion the impact of higher prices for the most vulnerable sectors, and also other measures like for past 20, 30 years or so. Conservation measures. The economy has already reduced dependence on imported oil, shift to renewables. Even in the 80s, 90s, the Philippines already made headway. Philippines at some point, the second biggest in the world for geothermal power after the US. Now it's number 3 after US, Indonesia. And we have seen, that in recent years shift to renewables. Like the biggest investments into the Philippines are renewables.
All right.
Offshore
All right,
wind,
Michael.
solar, hydro, geothermal. So
All right.
away from that, and of course on top of that, the conservation measures
All right.
to really reduce structurally
All right,
the
Michael.
reliance on imported oil.
Okay. All right. Very well said. So yeah, as much as we would like to discuss more of these economic developments here and abroad, but we don't have much valuable time here on Radio Pilipinas World Service. But anyway, thank you as always, Mr. Michael Ricafort, the Chief Economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, for joining us. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jerome, and to your viewers, and have a great day ahead.
Okay. And with that, the interview of the program with Mr. Michael Ricafort, the Chief Economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, we end now the program Front and Center here on Radio Pilipinas World Service. Together with our production team and technical personnel, this is your host, Jerome Toledo. Until next time, mabuhay, love the Philippines.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radio Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.